Did you want to take some?
No,
No,
okay.
too late now. You can take water.
Welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm still Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And
Anthony Galluccio.
Yes,
All right.
special guest.
now,
Thanks.
when we last met, so not so long ago, we were talking a little bit about the upcoming Envision Cambridge citywide planning process. And actually, just during the interim break here, we were talking a little bit of how that's going to get kicked off, and if there's any sort of expectations about how it might proceed. I think the one thing I was saying right off the bat was I don't envy the city manager who's going to be in the position of having to make the decisions or the appointments of the various people who will serve on this committee.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
I mean, no, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Even if you do the perfect balance, there will be some who will feel that no, you were stacking the deck this way or that way. It's almost a guarantee, at least on the optimistic side. At least the planning people, the Utah company who's supposed to facilitate this. I think their hope was that they would find consensus amongst people, and what's common. What people have in common, and that ultimately maybe something good that everybody can be agreeable to would grow out of it.
Yeah, I mean, for a planning effort to sustain itself, you have to get a lot of people vested in it because, again, when a proposal comes forward of some sort, right, some new development proposal, if people aren't vested in the planning process, they're not going to respond well to this was a priority in the planning process,
Right.
and therefore you should
Right.
support it. So
Right.
I think how widespread it gets bought into is really important at the end of the day, and that's hard. It's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and one of the things we learned in the sort of teaching profession is that the importance of the first lecture. I think it's sometimes true also with some of these public processes. If you begin where at the first meeting, it's like side A on this wall and side B on this wall, shouting at each other. It'll take a half a year just to get past that.
Yeah. Although it's funny, so I might do a transition here, but I've been helping the taxi drivers, owners and drivers, and when I started helping them, because I think they're an industry worth saving, but they have to modify some things, and I think
Right.
they have to make some changes. But when I was organizing them, some of the drivers would say, you don't want Robert there. He's going to go crazy. He's going to scream. And I'd say, no, I want all of them there because, number one, if he's out there screaming, it makes the effort look not credible.
Right.
And so let's give it a college try. And it did get a little bloody. And I said after we could be multimillionaires on reality TV if we had filmed. I mean, because this is a very eclectic group of people who have chosen.
I'll say.
I'm a taxi driver. I don't want a boss. I want to work on my own. I'm not collaborative by nature. And now we have to mount this organizing effort against one of the most well-financed, politically savvy, these guys are serious. Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
I mean, they're being financed by
Oh, really?
the man. Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
the man. Huh?
oh yeah, the man on steroids. We pushed to really get some of the loudest voices, and we ended up having a phenomenal meeting. And the thought was that because I had been so supportive of the industry, that maybe I could bring some reality to this situation. That you really need to make some changes in order to preserve your place in the playing field, and try to. A lot of people feel strongly that some of these new companies should have to adhere to some of the safety regulations and identifications.
Right.
And so it was actually very exciting, and I think that I learned a lot. Again, reinforcing things that I learned in politics, which is be honest with people, and if they trust you, they will sense that you're really trying to help,
Right.
even if you're saying things that are hard to hear. And it actually went really well, and they endorsed a new code of conduct.
Right.
They're going to do something very special in the next couple of weeks, which you'll hear about. They've agreed to allow Boston to pick up in Cambridge if they can pick up in Boston.
Really?
which is a huge compromise.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that was actually.
They voted
I didn't
unanimously,
know that
and
that
a couple
was-
people said, they're gonna
No,
do
is
better
that-
than us, and I said,
When you say they, does that mean Boston cabbies and Cambridge
the
cabbies?
They
or all?
Cambridge drivers who attended this meeting, we don't have an official
Yeah.
association, but there were over 100 represented people,
Mm-hmm.
which represents probably a majority of the medallion owners, unanimously agreed that if Boston allowed Cambridge, Cambridge would allow
Okay.
Boston.
And that's the
huge thing.
Is
That is huge.
And that's a message to customers that
Mm.
we're going to stop thinking about, do they do better than us? Do we do better than them? Customers want to raise their hand when they come out of the fleet center and get a damn cab. So
Right.
that was a big one. We should have done it a long time ago.
Well, you know, the big one has always been the,
I don't know
the
if it's-
airport rides too.
Well, we gave
Because
up.
the airports in Boston.
Well, yeah, they agreed to not try to take
I
airport
see.
stands away from Boston because I said that will
Okay.
that will go on. Let's just try to do a mutuality. Leave the airport out. I mean, obviously you can still get picked up and go to the airport from Cambridge.
Right.
And they, that shows. I could never have gotten them to agree
No,
to
that's
that.
great.
7 years
I'm going to
ago.
ask a question just as a
Yeah.
concerned citizen because I don't know. Is one of the big issues that they have to pay for a license or a
Huge.
medallion?
Huge.
So how does that? Because that to me is the big stumbling block.
What
Because an
people-
Uber driver is just paying for their own car.
What people never realized is
Yeah.
that the expenditure for the medallion, which
Mm-hmm.
when I started was like 350,000, is now up to 700. The insurance, which is not applicable to Uber and
Yeah.
Lyft right now, the other regulations that are imposed on taxis made it so expensive that it's why you didn't see a lot of new cars. It's why you
But
you
who
didn't.
can even afford that kind of I don't get how anyone even comes up with that kind of money to get a medallion. Or is that the only, you can run a taxi without having a medallion?
Well, you'd go to the bank and like a piece like a real
It's like getting
any
an
real
expensive
property.
condo? Wow.
Yeah, you'd have to come up. But it's also why the owners would grind out the people who rented shifts. Do you understand? So
I
it
guess,
was
yeah.
and that's when people used to say the cab's old. And I felt like people didn't really understand the financial burden. So Robert can take his 2012 Honda Accord without the same insurance, without having to pay a license, and just go pick somebody up.
But-
And his
but who-
car's nicer than
Okay, but who benefits from that medallion money?
What do you mean?
Where does that money go? I mean, I don't
You know,
understand.
Oh no,
why.
it's bank financed.
Yeah, but then why is it so high?
Let's take a
Yeah,
step back.
all right,
The thing is,
yeah.
the city or town issues the medallion and charges a fee for a new one. But once it's there, it's saleable.
It's like a liquor
So is
license,
it a city or town that's making the money from these?
No, only on the original sale.
which goes back.
Okay, so can that change? That system change?
Well, you
Well,
know,
I mean, it seems to
the
me
issue
like-
now
yeah.
is the issue now is, but you're right in that somebody might have bought a medallion for $50,000.
And they're
Someone else
making a
might have
lot
bought
of-
it $650.
Right.
But the problem is, if government were going to do this fairly, they would have a long time ago
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
bought out the medallions
Right.
and deregulated.
And there are
but
some
it's
who-
too expensive to do that now.
well, yeah, I don't know how you make this practical, but I've certainly
Yeah,
heard from
it's-
cab owners. They said one possibility is the cities and towns would pay back the original cost. But
Yeah.
if you
That's
dropped
not
a
gonna
$500,000 on a medallion and you're going to get back your.
I don't even
Yeah.
tell taxis
Yeah.
what they want to hear on that level. I look at this as there were reasons why we regulated commercial fares. It wasn't just safety. It was
Yeah.
you got in a cab, you knew what the rate was. New Year's Eve, Uber surge rated, and we're charging people double, triple what regular rates are.
Right.
So I think as this goes on, people will realize having a regulated taxi industry, it may not be the car you rent to go out for your anniversary or you rent to go to the prom. That may still be, some fancy, but
Yeah.
I think people will realize there's a place in the world for taxis, and if taxis improve some things and some regulations come into place, I don't think we're going to get rid of necessarily the non-licensed commercial vehicles. But some communities have looked at capping them. So
Yeah.
because environmentally, you don't want 4,000 cars idling during rush hour
cruising
No,
for a ride.
but
Yeah, I mean,
but
that's,
Ubers don't really idle. I mean, that's the other. I mean, some of them don't because
look
some
carefully.
of them. Right, but some of them are just it's part-time jobs. They don't do it all. They don't do it like some of the cab drivers. If that is their livelihood.
They have acknowledged there's 10,000 individual drivers. We think there's probably we think there's a minimum of 4,000 to 5,000 in Cambridge and Boston during rush hours.
Well,
Those are new cars.
the new AARP newsletter, which I get because
You
I'm sure you
can't.
do. Yeah, oh, believe me,
Can't.
I could get it twice over. But anyway,
Oh,
they
I
are
would
talking
know
about
nothing
how
about
it's been a nice thing for the older people because they have some extra income, and there are a lot of older.
Oh,
and
no.
They also trust them because they're older. The Uber drivers.
They
so,
look. They
you know?
so this is the equivalent
Yeah,
of
yeah.
somebody brings milk to your door
Uh-huh.
for half the price you currently buy at,
Yeah.
certified and fresh,
Yeah.
but doesn't have to buy any of the licenses.
No,
Doesn't
I
open.
understand that.
And
yeah.
once I get that milk,
Yeah.
no politician in the world is going to say you can't buy that
you
milk
can't buy
anymore.
that milk, right?
Where Uber and Lyft are completely brilliant. They
Mm-hmm.
flood the market, and then they force politicians to have to say you
catch up
can't
with
do
what-
this,
okay.
and the customers are already ecstatic.
Yeah.
And at that point,
Yeah.
the issue of fairness is not as
Right.
important. But taxis have been a really reliable service for seniors. Short fares to hospitals
well, if
and
they-
so
'cause
forth
they
for
can get
years.
discounts. They can get discounts, right?
One of
but
the regulatory advantages locally was that it was a requirement that there be a certain number of handicap accessible cabs. I don't think that any such requirements are placed on Uber.
Yeah, no, and
No, are you understanding that I'm saying the drivers are older?
as an employment
No,
source.
no, as an employment
Working,
source. Right,
yeah,
right,
I
right.
get that.
Okay, all right.
And I mean, I think
Yeah.
time will tell
Yeah, whether that,
how
yeah.
well they treat their employees. And the
Yes.
other issue is
Yeah.
everyone's got a horror story, taxi story, because
Right.
you've been in a taxi 100
Right.
times.
Yeah.
Over
Well,
time,
there's Uber horror stories with women,
right.
so,
it,
yeah.
I'm hoping the industry survives.
Yeah.
And
It's going
that-
to
and
change
that
just
there's
like
a
the
place.
newspaper
Yep.
industry. I mean,
But
as a Globe subscriber, I can attest to that.
a lot of immigrants that were
Yeah.
not necessarily
Right.
desirable employees
Yeah.
for employers for no good reason
Yeah.
were able to build families and start a life as cab
Yeah.
drivers, and
No,
people
it's-
should realize that that's
I
real.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I tried to stay away, and these guys,
No, I think it's
I was an
important
advocate for
issue, yeah.
15 years, and they're really out there alone right now. There's not a lot going. There's not a lot of.
Well, actually, I remember
Advocates.
because to me, I wasn't paying any attention to this, and I don't take cabs ever. You know, I walk.
I don't either.
Right? You know, if I had to get to the airport,
Yeah.
take the subway, or I
Well,
walk
now you have
somewhere,
the
right, or
Silver
bike
Line. Yeah.
or something. So I don't know when this thing really kind of flashed into the headlines, but it was some sort of big crisis thing. Maybe I think it was when the License Commission was going to enforce some regulations that was going to come down on Uber, and then the Uber people just lit up the social media.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they would Twitters and this and like that, and they created a manic moment where, like, you know, the world is outraged at the Cambridge License Commission, you know?
Yeah.
And it was very, I mean, maybe they should have been, maybe they shouldn't have been, but it was a very much
Yeah.
a manufactured.
I was reading
outrage.
articles about the Seattle experience, and even people who support Uber were
Yeah.
very critical of their tactics.
Oh, yeah. No,
they're
no,
a
yeah.
serious machine.
Yeah.
So again, taxis aren't perfect. Uber's
Uh-huh.
not perfect. There is a fairness issue. I would like them to stay alive to
Now,
fight another
my
day.
understanding was that the state legislature at least was entertaining
They are.
some bills to do some things
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
about
I
that?
think the things that are likely to pass are fingerprinting, which the state police have all come out and said, vehicle ID, so we know what one of these cars is,
Right.
and what isn't. Insurance, that,
By the way, I just interrupt here. You know, I didn't really know much about Uber, but I was on a walk and I was coming back from Charlestown. It was nighttime. We're just coming into Paul Revere Park, and some black car comes up, and I'm walking there with two women, and a guy rolls down the window and goes, "Uber,"
Oh.
and I'm like, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Oh, did you
There's
call
no
for an
marking
Uber?
at all.
No.
Yeah, no.
I know.
Honestly, if there was a little magnetic strip you could slap on the door
Yeah.
that said Uber, just so that you could identify them.
Yep.
Well,
yeah,
usually you have your smartphone though, and you know when it's right there.
Not me.
Well, you don't, because you're a Luddite.
But there's a
No.
safety, just.
No, I agree.
So it's, I think those are things that having them carry insurance that is Massachusetts-based insurance that pays into the state insurance, but also there is some concerning statements about how the insurance flows and who you would have to chase if you were in,
Well, I was
you
going to
know.
ask you, what do the insurance companies say? I mean, aren't they concerned that there are people that have regular car insurance are using their cars for
Very,
that?
very complicated. A lot of
Oh,
it hasn't
is it?
played out yet as to
Okay.
how
Seems to me
who
they
you
could put
chase
pressure
if
on
you
it.
get.
I
But
see.
yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that I think
Yeah.
even people who support choice in this
Yeah.
will support. And there's a couple different bills. There's one bill,
Statewide?
and I believe the governor's
Yeah.
bill that also, I should say, and the governor's bill.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bill by State Rep Moran and Linda Dorsina Fiore, who's
Oh,
a
yeah.
state senator. I think all the legislation proposed allows local communities to impose
Okay.
other
Their own
restrictions
regulations. Okay.
that is unique to that community.
Huh.
Yeah, so we'll
right.
see.
Yeah. So ultimately, as with the issue of Boston cabs picking up in Cambridge and vice versa, I would kind of hope that what comes out of all of this is a little more of a kind of a regional perspective, so that
Yeah.
it's not so feudal and
Like with
you know,
all the
all
plastic
community
I
bags.
think
bags and
eventually
all that
that's
stuff.
where you end up, yeah.
Yeah.
We hope so. We'll
Yeah.
see. That's not signed off on yet, but we'll hope so.
But there is a taxi committee, tax?
Yeah, the city manager put together a group of people.
And you go to that?
I was appointed to that, and
And
it
it's-
also includes representatives of the non-licensed commercial vehicles, the
So
Uber
it's
and
pretty
Lyft.
representative of,
It is, more so than the taxis would like, but I think it's
Uh-huh.
healthy. And it's
Interesting.
good, the
Okay.
hotels, the seniors are
Oh,
represented,
all right.
the persons with disabilities are represented, so, anyway.
okay.
Sounds like another good appointment from Mr. Rossi.
So let's
We're
go to
trying
one
to-
of your interests, which is the.
Yeah, actually, so let's
the
see, in
STEM.
classic John McLaughlin style.
Oh.
Issue 3.
Issue 3. Yeah.
Issue 3. One of the things that I always associated with you as a city councilor was you always, whether it was a zoning thing or whatever, you always were the one who would negotiate for saying, can we get some apprenticeships out of
Yeah,
this
the
for our
youth, the
Cambridge
youth of
kids
the-
and
of the
whatever.
city, yeah.
You were the guy who always were looking out for the young,
Yeah.
born and bred Cambridge
Yeah.
kids who weren't necessarily going to be enjoying the products of the local economy.
Right.
Apprenticeships for unions and whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a sort of a topic because I think this last council term there was. I mean, it's funny how the discussion seems to shift around. Everybody's talking about STEAM and STEM.
Yeah.
So now it's all merged with education and arts and whatever. But but there is clearly some connection in what people talk about and I know Dennis Benson very much was
Yeah.
very much dedicated to this, was finding this miracle way of matching kids who were born and raised here to the potential jobs in Kendall Square and elsewhere.
Yeah, so I serve on the Hildebrand Family Self-Help Center for years on the board, and I was vice chair of the board at Central Latino, and I have a few charities myself. I coach
Right.
high school sports and also youth sports,
You coach football?
football,
My
baseball.
daughter thought she saw you on,
Oh,
on
yeah.
the sideline at the
Yeah, yeah.
Thanksgiving game.
Yeah.
Isn't that Anthony Galluccio?
Not in
I
a
don't
good
know.
mood on Thanksgiving.
that was a bad
we
game.
weren't doing well.
Bad game.
Richard
That-
Harding said no one hates losing more than him.
But I think that was the last Somerville game. They got rid of their football program.
No
I
way.
thought I heard that.
No, the mayor's an assistant coach.
But wait a minute.
It ain't
All
happening.
right. No, I'm sorry.
Not
I
under
heard
a
something
strong
about
mayor system.
Somerville High School football. All right, you should know,
No.
but I
But so
was
one,
shocked.
somebody said to me today, actually Patrick Rowe, who's on the board of the Margaret Fuller, said, I want to make sure that Margaret Fuller gets more active with kids and connecting them to what's going on in Kendall Square. And this is a decade, decade after decade disconnect.
Yes.
And so whether it's sort of, I would say more particular to the new economy. I think in the old days, kids knew if I got a job at Polaroid or I got a job at Harvard Buildings and Grounds, I could ascend.
Right.
And the kids in the city thought they could get a job like that.
Well,
like
Polaroid was a great community partner.
yeah.
in that state.
Now I would argue more white kids thought that, but I think generally there was a sense that there were manufacturing jobs. There were more sort of union. You could go work for Verizon.
Yeah.
You could work for N-Star. So I do think a lot of this is like the new economy. But what I said to him is, there's a mindset. J. Cole, the rapper, he's got his documentary on, and he says, I left. He lived in North Carolina, Fayetteville, and he said, I left because I thought I had to leave, but I realize now that what I wanted to achieve, I could have achieved in Fayetteville, but I didn't think I could.
Interesting.
And so I think about, we don't do a good job of saying to our high school kids, you could become a general contractor. And we know, you right now in Cambridge, you can't find somebody to rebuild your porch.
Right.
Right.
And I sit there and go, if we had 5 kids come out of the high school every year that became general contractors, and they each hired 10 kids.
Yes.
So that's one example, but go be an HVAC
That's a good,
repair
I will
person.
make you a promise. If you can get one of those groups here, they can come work on my porch.
I have
next
3
year.
people call me
I'll
this
make
week
that
for
commitment.
small jobs. No, and
Yeah.
you look at biotech lab positions where you're not a scientist, but you have some math, specific math training. I work with these kids. You know how many kids come to me and ask me to get them a job at Tasty Burger? And I say, hey, Tasty Burger, by the way, one of the most exemplary employees
Really?
in terms of hiring
health
people with
insurance?
criminal records
Oh, good.
and setting a management ladder where you can go on and make 50, 60. But bottom line is, our kids, and I said to Patrick, I'm a great example of this. The only reason I bought property is because my mother said, time to go. Literally, I had 3 phone lines, I think, in my bedroom. I was doing constituent work.
I can imagine all of this.
It's ugly. So, when I left, I was renting.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to stay in the city because I wanted to be an elected official. But the only reason I bought the house is because as an elected official, I knew I needed to stay.
Yeah.
I didn't do it as a real estate investment.
Yeah.
And now I think, wow, you grew up in Cambridge.
Yeah.
You're a moron if you don't realize you buy here, it's better than any investment you can make.
But can you buy here though? That's
But I know plenty of kids that have gone and spent equal amounts of money in
Really?
Randolph with a pool in the backyard.
Oh, because they wanted that kind
Correct,
of
but it's not just to buy property, it's to
Sure.
understand the jobs associated with this real estate market.
Yeah.
And I really think, not to sound cheesy, because I've had my days when I was all about a program, like opening up the high school at night for adults to retrain.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something to the fact that our high school leaders have to be telling our kids, you can do this.
Yeah.
And then they need to see. I can remember getting an African American, Jamil Jean Pierre. He was running around, not constructive stuff, and we got him into the Iron Workers Union.
Wow.
And he was a tough kid who a lot of kids looked up to.
Yeah.
And he was all of a sudden making $30 an hour.
Wow.
And all his friends, a lot of kids from the project, said, I want a job too.
Yeah.
Right.
And not the stuff he used to be doing. They wanted to do what he was doing.
That's
and
great.
he was saying, I'm going to have a pension. And so
Yeah.
I think you underestimate the culture that is public
Right.
housing and working class neighborhoods.
Right.
I was, in this sphere. If one kid
Right.
goes and
Can
gets
do
a
that.
general contractor license and does good and starts driving a nice car
They
and
become
is
a
happy,
role model, right.
100%. So this, I feel like a lot of this is empowerment and
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
And it's not just that new program. And so,
Right.
employers have to buy in, but we have to train kids.
Yeah.
we're not asking, no company's gonna do you a favor and hire
Right.
somebody not qualified.
Right.
So we have to be saying, what can we do to better train?
Right.
But it is sad
Yeah.
that I look at the hotel industry, the biotech, just the office market here, that the kids are still saying to me, and nothing wrong with you working
Yeah.
at Tasty Burger
Right.
or God knows, I think I admire the guys that work at Public Works. I really do. But you gotta have it when you're a kid. That's when your imagination should be at its
Right.
highest point.
Do they have job fairs at the high school? Do they bring in these other
The
kinds
kids
of industries?
the kids who don't believe it's for them
Oh, they
aren't
don't
gonna show up at that.
That's
Ah,
right.
interesting.
So even, and I love, there are a lot of kids doing great stuff, but how do you get to that next line? State colleges, when I chaired higher ed for the Senate, I started a campaign of Yes You Can, because poor kids don't realize they can afford state college. And you can get in.
Yeah.
And they really, kids that have been told you can't do it and who look around and,
That's the whole
they're
thing.
fighting to, just pay the light bill every month. They don't have that sense of inspiration,
true.
so we gotta stay on
No,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's someone to believe in them that said yes. you
Absolutely.
I tell you, if we could take your energy
Yeah.
and your ideas and your way of going about this and somehow merge that with what was going on with Dennis Benson and others over the last term over the STEAM initiative, maybe we could make some headway.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's gotta believe that investing in kids
Yeah.
is the investment,
Right.
and it's so refreshing. Kids just, it's become the balance in my life. I always knew it was, but through coaching and one-on-one stuff, it really gives you a different perspective.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this
Anyway,
was great.
and with that, I
Yeah.
guess we're going to draw to a close here. So this has been yet another edition of